Today we're talking about another horrifying and kind of obscure Hans Christian Andersen story, The Ice Maiden. Not to be confused with The Snow Queen, which I have another video on, and which involves complex, well-developed female characters and a super happy ending. This has neither of those, but it's spooky and fascinating and cool. The story is set in Switzerland and was inspired by this island called the Ile de Pelle in Lake Geneva, Switzerland. It's just a few dozen square meters. In winter, it looks like this, and its spooky vibe and legend about it is apparently what inspired Andersen to write this story, so let's dig in. It starts with a little boy named Rudy, our protagonist, who lives in Switzerland in the mountains. When Rudy was a baby, his father died, and his mother was traveling, walking through the mountains in the snow, carrying him as a baby, when she sinks into a hole in the snow and disappears in the snow underground. An hour later, people managed to dig her out and they thought she and the baby were both dead, but turns out the baby lived. And that's Rudy. Now, Andersen says in the glaciers of these mountains lives the Ice Maiden. Says she has long, snowy white hair flowing around her and her dark green robes glitters like the water of the deep Swiss lakes. Mine is the power to seize and crush, she says, and this little boy has been stolen from me. He's a boy whom I kissed, but did not kiss to death. So metaphorically, he almost died, and since that day he almost died as a baby, she wants him back. Rudy gets raised by his grandfather and becomes this amazing climber. Like, no one can climb the mountains like him. It's because his cat taught him how to climb, because they could talk to each other, and there are more talking cats in this story. The Ice Queen says, he is mine, always climbing higher and higher, but not from me. So she sends Vertigo, who is personified after him, but Vertigo says that monster of a cat has taught him her tricks, and I can't get him. So later, Rudy moves to town and becomes a grown man and is the handsomest and the best at everything. Perhaps a little bit of author wish fulfillment, because also the girls are all about Rudy. There's this girl named Annette who is like, Rudy kissed me at a dance once, and it said he certainly had kissed Annette, but she was not the flower of his heart. The flower of his heart is this girl named Babette, and she is the daughter of a very wealthy miller. That's the problem, because she is above Rudy's station. Still, Rudy is like, I want her, I'm gonna get her. He says nothing is too high for a man to reach. He must climb with confidence in himself. The theme of climbing, of trying to get higher, is obviously happening here in different ways in his life. So he starts courting Babette, and it's so funny. The story of their courtship is told by these two cats, her two cats, that talk about what they've seen going on between them. One day he's climbing through the mountains and this strange maiden comes upon him. She tries to touch him. She's like, I'll help you climb the mountain. But he says, I do not require a woman to help me climb. Unless it's socially. She disappears and he knows who she is. He says it certainly must be a specter or servant of the Ice Maiden. So Babette's dad does not want her to marry Rudy, and so he gives Rudy an impossible task, very common in fairy tales. He says he has to climb to the top of this mountain and get a baby eaglet and bring it back alive. Rudy's like, hell yeah, why didn't you ask for something hard? And he goes off to do it. And again, a lot of this is told from the perspective of the cats, and they say that Babette wished him farewell. Her voice is mournful as the mew of a kitten that has lost its mother. And the Ice Maiden is watching him as he tries to do this task. It says her eyes were like two barrels of a gun. She said, I have thee now. But she doesn't, because he succeeds, and he comes back down, and the miller says, how is it you did not break your neck? And he says, because I held fast, as I mean to hold fast to Babette. Damn. The miller agrees to their marriage and they get engaged. But Babette has a godmother who lives in England, and she comes to visit with her son, who is distantly Babette's cousin. It said he had golden hair and golden whiskers and immediately began to pay lots of attention to Babette, and Rudy gets jealous. Babette's like, don't you like my cousin? And he says, he is a perfect fop. She's like, hey, that's not very nice. And he's like, sorry, your cousin, quote, looks something like a flour sack without any flour. He literally yells at her, you preferred this man to me. Shame on you, Babette. And she says, you are detestable. Go away. I hate you. He stomps off into the mountains and comes across the Ice Maiden again. She's sort of taken the form of a human woman and has this hut, and she lures him in and he's like, do you have any warm milk? And she's like, I got something better than milk. But it's not that, it's wine. But it's wine that she gives him that makes him feel just amazing and dulls his senses a little. And he looks at her and says, hey, aren't you Annette? Now, that girl he kissed earlier before Babette? He's like, I think you're Annette. Give me a kiss. But the Ice Maiden's like, I'll give you a kiss if you give me that ring on your finger. He's like, this is my betrothal ring. And she's like, and? Rudy says to himself, the whole world is mine. Why should I grieve? The stream of life is a stream of happiness. Let us flow with it. So he flings his arms around her and he has this moment where he says, was he rising higher and higher, climbing again, or was he falling deep into a dark abyss? She kisses him, and it sends a chill of ice through his whole frame, and a cry of agony escaped him as he struggled to get free. When she disappears, he grabs his gun from the snow and tries to shoot, but she's gone, and so is his ring. He goes home, and again, through the perspective of the cats, we find out he and Babette have made up. But the night before their wedding, Babette has this dream. She dreams that she and Rudy have been married for many years, and one day while he's out hunting, her English cousin with the golden whiskers shows up and beckons her out of the house, and she follows him. As she did it, she felt she were committing a sin against Rudy and a sin against God, and then thorns tear at her clothes, her hair turns gray, and she despairs and she wakes up glad it was a dream. But she feels so guilty about this dream. She feels like she has cheated on Rudy, as opposed to Rudy, who feels no guilt for having actually kissed someone else while he was engaged to her. In the morning, she doesn't say anything about her dream, and before their wedding is supposed to happen that evening, she's like, let's drive out to that little island in Lake Geneva. I've always wanted to go out there, so let's go have a picnic. And he's like, sure. So they're out there, they're having the picnic, they're gazing into each other's eyes lovingly. He's like, tomorrow you'll be mine. But then they notice their boat has started to float away. So Rudy's like, cool, I'll go jump in the water, swim out and get it. But not cool. Once he's in the water, he looks below him and sees young hunters and maiden who had sunk deep into the chasms of the glaciers, standing before him with their eyes open, smiling. They are part of this giant ice village, and on this ice throne is the Ice Maiden. She swims up to him, kisses his feet, and he feels a cold electric shock through his body. She says, mine, mine, I kissed thee when thou wert a child, and now I have kissed thee from heel to toe, and you are wholly mine. She sucks him down into the water. Babette has known all about the Ice Maiden thing, and she runs to the edge and thinks, oh no, the Ice Maiden has him at last. Then in the creepiest image, the Ice Maiden rises up from the water with the corpse of Rudy at her feet, cries, mine, and disappears under the water, and Babette just sobs. And then says, was the germ of sin really in my heart? Was my dream a glimpse into the future of my life, whose thread must be violently broken to rescue me from sin? Like it's her fault because she had that cheating dream? That seems to be what Anderson is saying, because after that, Babette never gets married, lives with her dad the rest of her life. There's a rosy gleam in her heart as she thinks God permits nothing to happen which is not the best for us. So what's the moral? It really does kind of seem to be, don't try to climb too high. Not just social boundaries, but dreaming impossible dreams or thinking you know better than God. Or maybe both Rudy and Babette get punished for their sins. It's hard for me to think that they deserved all that for what they did, but that's a common trend in Hans Christian Andersen's writings. Severe punishment, especially if you dare to try too hard to be happy. But it's a really unique and cool story with awesome imagery. And it has this human longing we can all relate to. Check out my book, Dust Spells, a reimagining of another Brothers Grimm fairy tale, The 12 Dancing Princesses, and my podcast, Folk Tales and Fairy Lore. Link is in the bio.